Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hi everyone, welcome to another video on the JayBee
Hello.
and Milly channel. We are as always joined by Rhianna.
Hello.
And Devin.
Hi.
And today we have the absolute pleasure of being able to speak with Nicholas Hope.
Hi.
So thank you so much for joining us. I guess for everyone listening, you know, Nicholas Hope's done so many iconic roles, but perhaps the one that we're celebrating the most today is as the Lunar Ghost in Scooby Doo, the movie.
Yeah, it's like the 20th anniversary special right now. I can't even believe it's been that long because I have such vivid memories of watching the movie. But I suppose diving deeper into your career in general, the first credits that we can find for you acting wise in terms of, you know, IMDb and everything is in 1987, and you still continue to find some really fun things to do. So what kind of kick-started your acting career?
Well, to tell the truth, acting was kind of a secondary thing, and I used to I used to play in bands, and I'm old enough that it was in Australia, but I'm old enough that the first bands I was in were punk bands, and it's really why I started was because you didn't need to be able to play, and that sounds like I'm making a joke, but it was real. The group of people that I knew thought we can get together and we can probably, you know, manage to put this together. So we did, and we made this band called The Accountants. There's even a clip of them on the internet out there somewhere. And it was a hardcore kind of rock and roll type punk band. But I loved performing. I loved being on stage. Now, and there's something egocentric about it, really. In general terms, I was a fairly shy person, but I could be up there and people, you know, people would dance and scream and people wanted to know you and so on. I played bass. And I played in bands for a long time, but I wasn't very good. So none of it was ever going to get anywhere, really. It wasn't going to form something that enabled me to carry on, and acting was a follow-on. Basically, somebody who I eventually did work with in another band said, "Why don't you try acting?" And I said, "Well, I don't quite know how." And they said, "Well, you can study it for a start," which struck me as kind of bizarre. I didn't realize you could. And anyway, I ended up studying it and then moved into acting and really enjoyed that too.
Right. And in that transition, like you say, when you were studying acting or even growing up, was there any actors or I guess genres that you enjoyed that kind of directed you as to where you wanted to go with acting?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
So, you know, when you were saying you were studying acting and making that transition, were there any actors or even genres that you'd enjoyed that were ones that you wanted to kind of aim towards being or pursuing?
Yeah, I apologize for that. To tell you the truth, there weren't any iconic actors that I specifically stood out. There was just people that came along every now and again, and you'd think, my God, they're amazing, like Daniel Day-Lewis or Meryl Streep. And in terms of when I started, I was effectively a little bit of a wanker, really, and so I did really like kind of art house style movies like early David Lynch, but I used to poo-poo anything which was commercial, and yet when I think back on that, I actually quite enjoyed a lot of the stuff that was commercial. I just thought that it was correct to say, no, that's crap. And a lot of the time it wasn't. And nowadays it's a kind of mix.
That is super interesting to hear, like what inspired you kind of getting into it. And going back a little further into your growing up days, I'm probably the most qualified to ask this, being the only one in the US. But according to your IMDb, you're actually born in Manchester in the UK, which is right next to JayBee and Milly. Do you have any fun memories of growing up there in Manchester?
Oh, well, we left when I was 7 which is why I sound like I do now, as opposed to sounding like Milly and JayBee. So I have very few actual memories. I remember the fence of the school that I went to, which from my memory was just so huge and scary. I remember really bad school lunches. I don't know if they still do it in the UK, but they used to make, you paid at the time 50 pence a week and you got your school lunch, and you couldn't take lunch to school. And it was truly terrible. And I remember not eating it and sneaking out and being hauled back to the teacher, Mrs. Graff, who stood in front and pointed. It was a Catholic school, and said, "This boy is a sinner. He has left his food," and so on. That's a fairly strong memory. I remember walking through what I think was called Widdenshire Forest, and how beautiful that was. I have a memory of Bradley Brook, but when I went back there to visit it, it was my memory of it and the reality of what it is now, I don't know, were very different, and I don't know if I've just got the false memory of it. But it's distorted and mixed up memories.
Romantics has changed so much.
Yeah, well, of course it has. It's been, I'm 63 and I was 6 or 7 when we left, so it's a good 50 odd years.
I mean, one thing I will say is that at least when I was still going to school, the school lunches are still bad, but luckily we could bring in our own packed lunch. We had the honor of speaking to the production designer, Bill Bowes, and he mentioned that a movie that he really enjoyed watching was Bad Boy Bubby. And what was it like to work on that movie?
Well, I actually played the title role of Bubby. And I believe that's actually why the Scooby Doo people wanted me. A number of them had seen it and really liked it. I don't know if any of you have seen it. And it's one of those out there art house films that I would have liked when I was studying. Effectively, the film is about a man who is 35, but he's basically a man-child, and he's been brought up all his life in 2 rooms with his mother. And events conspire that he has to go out into the world, and he doesn't know how to cope with that world and has to learn. And therefore you see the world through his eyes, and you get the bizarreness of that world, the cruelties of that world, and the kindnesses of that world. There was a whole series of things that went with it. And one was that within the film, if the camera isn't on the character of Bubby, it's his point of view. So I was there 24/7 kind of thing. I was there all the time. There is not a shot in the film that I'm not involved with. And being a lead role is much easier than being a small role, because you're there all the time and you can see the shape the film is taking. So it was the easiest role I've done. It was the most interesting role I've done. It was probably the most interesting film I've ever been in. And it was quite experimental, but it's sort of just cleaned up at festivals. Loads of festivals wanted it, and it got became a very strong, iconic film because it's incredible. You just go on this roller coaster ride. They put microphones in the wig that I wore, so that just about 90% of the sound you hear in the film is from the character's head, from the point of view of the head. So visually, you're his point of view, and orally, you're his oral point of view. You can't help but see the world from his point of view. So it was a fascinating film to be in, and it was wonderful. And you're there all the time, and the crew's all there to support you, and the other actors are all there to support you. You just feel like a baby being mollycoddled. It's which is a wonderful feeling. I think most actors like that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That sounds like the new Joker movie stole Bad Boy Bubby's homework a bit. It's amazing. I definitely want to check that out. I found some clips. It's a little bit difficult to source online. Maybe it's just a UK thing, but hopefully we can give that a proper look around.
In Australia, it's on Netflix. So I don't know if it is in the UK.
We're definitely gonna have to give that a check. But you know, as you say, a lot of the Scooby Doo people saw Bad Boy Bubby and that they enjoyed it, and that's why you feel like you were brought on. But was there like a casting process for going on Scooby Doo, or like how did you initially get cast as like the Lunar Ghost?
I seriously got a phone call from my agent at the time saying, "We have an offer for you to be this character." And at the time, I was actually filming something else. It's very rare for an actor in Australia to be in one thing and they want you in something else, you know, have two jobs going at once. But as a result, I thought it was going to be a lot of effort to try to do both. But then they sent me what the little bit of script was, and effectively, it wasn't even the scene that's in there now. He was just a face. And then it went. And I said, that's actually it's not worth it, really. And then they rewrote it. And then there was something else, and I was saying, I'm not sure. And then they said, okay, well, we've got another thing going and we'll need you for 6 days. And they upped the price. And suddenly, you know, it was worth it.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Now, when I say that, you know, it was the most I've been paid per day, which was amazing, but that was $5,000 a day, and I was working with people who were on $500,000 a day. So, you know, there are differences, but for me, that was one heck of a lot of money. $30,000 for 6 days was just phenomenal.
I guess that's just incredible, and definitely, like, with a movie that's still being enjoyed after all this time, like the amount of times people would have watched that scene, it's just incredible. And I suppose like the world of Scooby has been one that's expanded for 50 plus years now. And prior to being cast in the live action movie, did you watch any of the cartoons at all growing up, or were you familiar with the characters?
I was familiar with it, yeah. I had children at the time who used to watch it a lot and used to watch the characters. So I was really, yeah, very familiar with it. And I had no idea how they were going to put it together as a live action film. Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is, like you say, to turn it into a live action film was something they'd not done before, but it was, you know, it was just received so well. And even now, one of the more recent series of Scooby Doo, the Lunar Ghost, is actually in the background, because it has just been so well loved after so long that, you know, references are made to it, and so many people do still love it. And it was really interesting what you were saying about, you know, how the role of the Lunar Ghost evolved, because, you know, we've been made aware that there were some changes, like you said, to appear just as a face initially. But in terms of the movie that actually came out with the Lunar Ghost flying in at the beginning to be unmasked, were you ever the one in the Lunar Ghost costume itself? Because quite often they get different people to be inside the costumes from when they're unmasked. So were you actually the one in the costume, or were you just there from the point of the unmasking?
Basically from the point of the unmasking. When you see him stagger back and fall down, that's me, and that's where I'm in. But I can tell you a funny story about it if you want it.
Oh yes, please.
So and the rest of it was a stunt sequence, which I think took weeks to film. So that was stuntmen in that costume. And when it got to me, they they brought me on, and I'd been watching stuff, and it was, you know, I'd been on set behind the director watching. It was amazing. It was the biggest biggest set I'd ever been on. And then it got to me, and they stood me there, and they brought out the mask, and it was, you know, it was very large, and it was really heavy. It was, you know, I think it was about 7 or 8 kilos, something like that. And they put it on, and of course it wobbled. And the director said, "What? I think he called out at the time, you know, Nicholas, can you keep it still?" And I said, "There's nothing in here to keep it still with. It's just space around my head." And then so he called the people who'd made it, and they said, "Well, we understood from the script that he was going to be lying on the ground and the mask would come off." And the director said, no, he's going to fall down, and then he's going to be pulled up and the mask will be taken off. And they had this big kerfuffle, and then they took it away. And they came back, because the other thing was they were dependent on sunlight. They had lots of lights in there, but they needed the sunlight coming in the factory, and the sun was going down. So they brought back the head, and they had inside, they'd kind of put like, it was a bit like really thick paddle pop things across here, and then another paddle pop out here, so that if I jutted my chin out, which is how I end up doing the character anyway, if I jutted my chin out and put it down like this and had my head like this, I could just hold it straight. And we had to practice, because it did wobble, and they didn't want it to wobble because you've had that whole sequence. But by the end of lots of practice, I eventually said, "Guys, my neck is giving way, and we're gonna have to roll on this because I can't hold it anymore." So the solution was they brought a doctor out who said, "What's wrong with your neck?" And I said, "Nothing is wrong with my neck. I've just got this 8-kilo thing on it, and I'm supposed to hold it still with a paddle pop on my chin." And you know, they said, "Oh, you can do it, you can do it." And then the light went. So everything got packed away, and then we came back the next day. And I managed to hold it still. Then we got to the section, sorry, I'm carrying on. We got to the section where he has to float up in the air. And the director said, "Okay, you know, let's put the harness on." And we put a harness on, and I was thinking, how are the straps going to come out the back? And sure enough, there was nothing for the straps to come out of the back. Nobody had told the costume people that I was going to be, you know, taken up in the air. So then the costume had to go away and had to be redone so that so that we could get that. So a sequence that was designed to take about 2 hours with all the lighting and so on, basically took it took about a day in total.
Gosh, it sounds like it's a good thing they got you for the 6 days, because with things like that, they could have maybe needed you a little bit longer. And
it's nobody's fault. It's just when you're on something so big, the lines of communication get lost. That's all, really.
Yeah. And there certainly was a lot of people involved in the movie, some absolutely incredible people. And one of the people that is in the movie around the scenes, like these scenes that we've been speaking about, is Pamela Anderson, and your character has some dialogue there as well. So were you pretty much there for the same filming days? Did you get to speak to them much aside from the recording?
I didn't get to speak to her much outside of the recording, and she largely kept to herself. She had a retinue with her. I can't say for sure, but a lot of people, when they're that high up, generally use their own makeup person and their own costume people and so on. She had a retinue with her, but she was just very, very polite, very nice, and at the end of filming, went round everybody on the floor, shook their hand, looked them in the face, and said, you know, very nice working with you. Thank you very much for your patience, and so on.
That is super nice. Next to Pamela Anderson, did you get to like interact with any of the other main cast or like other actors in the movie?
Not really. I was there for the 6 days and I hung around. Most, like the people that I knew mostly were crew, Australian crew who were on it, and I kind of hung with them a little bit. The kind of star cast tended to clump together, which sounds, well, I think it often happens, but also to give you an example, they got to Brisbane and a radio station put a call out saying, if anybody manages to get their photo taken with Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr., then, you know, you win this big prize. So they were being hunted in the streets. You know, people were out in packs looking for them. And you think, that's really hard. It just means you can't go out. So within that, I suddenly thought, well, it makes a certain amount of sense that people are just keep to themselves. At the same time, there were some, you know, there were stories that, and I don't know who this was, but there was a story of one of the main stars ordering someone to go and get them, you know, a drink, and it came back with a straw and they threw it away because the straw was the wrong color. So you had bad behavior from kind of locals and bad behavior on set. Yeah, but the crew were great.
Well, that's good to hear at least.
Everybody was very pleasant to work with and very supportive within the work environment.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. That's always good to hear that, you know. So obviously it's kind of common knowledge now that the movie went through a lot of different iterations and, you know, creative direction and like ratings and things like that. Is there any scenes or lines you remember having that got cut or didn't make it into the film or anything like of that nature?
In the scene that actually appears, I think that's exactly how it was. But they did, I know they filmed, well, at least 2 endings, because I was the other end, or I was the other end I know of, where it was going to be Old Man Smithers, who is the evil person. And to that's part of the 6 days. So to that effect, I remember I had to be laser scanned, and they made I still have it in the garage somewhere, and I forgot to bring it up, but they made my head so they could use it in animation. And then we had I was taken into a special studio, and there was a beanbag there, and they had several cameras, and they said, the beanbag is Scooby Doo, fight it. And effectively, you know, there's the bit that's supposed to be Scooby Doo's head, and there's other bits, and you have to pretend it's coming at you, and then you grab it and you hold it away, hold the head away because it's going to bite you, and you throw it and you get thrown by it, and it's actually a great deal of fun. And I have no idea to this day whether they even bothered to run that as a test, or whether they thought the animated Scrappy Doo was just how they were going to go, or not. But I had fun doing that, and in my head, I am one of the ends of the first Scooby Doo.
That would be a totally different movie. That would have been so interesting to see.
Yeah.
I hope that someday, you know, we're always saying about like the Gosnell cut. I hope one day we get to see like your version of the ending that you were in, because it sounds like so much fun. And, you know, you mentioned alongside appearing in the scene, in that scene, like you also appeared later on in the movie and deleted scenes and stuff. And where was the opening filmed in relation to the location of the later scene?
What they did was they had a whole island that exists off the coast of Brisbane, which is a fun park. So they utilized that. And so there's a scene with lots, I haven't seen the film for quite a long time, but there's a scene near the end where lots of people are gathering and there's boats coming in and there's airplanes and there's people on the beach, and I think it's just before the climax. And what I remember is we had to film that twice, because in one of them, which is the one that gets in, it's Scrappy Doo who is unmasked, and in the other it's me. So we had to film one without me and one with me, and that was on the beach of that island. So it's all shot on this in various locations around this little island.
Oh wow, that makes us want to go to that island like even more, to just be there and figure out, because I think we've all watched this movie so many times that we can just go and be like, this is where this scene was filmed, I think, and this is where the other scene. It would be so much fun to explore that and imagine what could have been with like your ending. And I guess in terms of the alternate ending, you're revealed to be the main antagonist of the movie. And do you remember how exactly it played out in terms of story and dialogue?
No, I don't, and I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
I don't even know if they had that. So I kind of I don't think I got to see the full script. I got that scene, and 'cause they were very secretive about everything, for obvious reasons. And then they said, now we're gonna, there's a potential ending where it'll be Mr. Smithers. And so we have to have you fighting the dog, and we have to have you in this scene, and we have to have something or other. And we filmed those. And that was it. I don't know how it tied together.
That's so interesting.
And when I watched the film, I couldn't actually see how it would.
No, because Scrappy is of course in a mechanical like Rowan Atkinson suit, and so it was kind of like, was Mr. Smithers going to be dressed up as Rowan Atkinson for the whole film? It's very interesting to see how they were going to tie that in. It's amazing. But I suppose, like, do you recall at what point that change was made? Like, did you see the movie and it wasn't you, or were you told that it was going to be Scrappy at any point?
I saw the movie and it wasn't me.
I mean, it's interesting because the Lunar Ghost is still a massive part of the film, to the point where they're on every single poster, every single bit of merchandise, all the DVD covers, like. And even the wrap gift, actually, I think a few of like I think maybe the executives, it was like a statue of the Lunar Ghost that they got given. Did you get given any like props or anything at all to like take away?
I knew nothing of this.
Oh no.
I knew nothing.
Oh man.
I'm so sad.
No, well, I guess that you say you got in the garage the head that was made for the animation element of things, which does sound absolutely incredible. And you were saying that, you saw the movie when it came out. Did you go to the premiere? Was there a screening in Australia that you saw, or did you wait till it kind of came out on DVD?
No, I paid my ticket and went.
Wow.
So I just went and watched it to see what it was. Yeah. I don't know. I suppose there would have been a premiere in Australia, but they probably did it in Brisbane because that's where it was filmed. But I'm making this up now. And I imagine, had there been a premiere in Sydney, I would have been invited. It would have just been a clear thing to do.
Well, it was great that you went over to that you say you flew over for the premiere in America and got to see that. And can I ask, in terms of, you know, the roles that you've played, have you ever been recognized as the Lunar Ghost?
No.
Oh.
In fact, every now and again, you know, people, I get recognized for the other one you mentioned, for Bad Boy Bubby, mostly. But every now and again, when people have, you know, sometimes people say, "Oh, what are you?" and you say you're an actor, and they say, "Oh, would I have seen you in anything?" And the obvious one to say is, "Well, I was, you know, I was in Scooby Doo for about 10 seconds," and they say, "Oh, who are you?" And I say, "I was Old Man Smithers," and they go, "Oh, yes, you were." So yeah. When I look at it, I must admit it looks like me. There was, you know, they made me look, I suppose, around about as old as I am now. So I probably look rather like I look now, except without the beard.
That's crazy, because like I was not expecting your accent to be what it was, because it was so different in the movie. And then to like do some research on you, watching a previous interview, I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible.
That's right. Yeah,
that is so interesting.
I forgot, what's his line again?
It's like, how could you, Pamela? I was a lover of George Clooney.
Yeah, that's right. It's a voice a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah. Which was helped very much by putting the chin out to put on that lollipop stick.
I was gonna say, you look just about the same as you did in the movie. Honestly, your hair is just a little bit more wacky, but it's pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah.
No, but
well, I've grown the prosthetics now, because they have prosthetics under here to make, you know, the baggy, and they put a lot of liver spots on, and they're all they're here now. We could do the remake, and I could do it again.
I would love to see
Revenge
a third
of the
one.
Lunar Ghost.
Yeah, exactly. That would be amazing.
Because his last line is, "I'll get you for this." So it's been 20 years. We need
the long game. It's the long game. But no, in regards to the promotion of the film, you mentioned that you didn't get any like props to take home or anything like that. Did you ever see any of the action figures, the Lunar Ghost action figures that came out afterwards? Or do you like have any for yourself or anything like that?
No, I didn't actually know there were.
What visual aid
game
is this one?
Oh my God,
it's you!
Wow.
And that's awesome, because when they made the ones for like Shaggy and stuff, it was cartoon Shaggy, and so you're like the only like person in the movie with an action figure from like an original character.
Good Lord.
Wow. That's just incredible.
Yeah, that is.
That is crazy. 20 years go by. 20 years go by. You know, you have your own action figure. But how
oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I can't not wait.
How does it feel? How does it feel to have your own action figure and to be part of a film that people love so much, like so long, like after?
The action figure is a surprise, and it's kind of, I'm amused more than anything else. It's kind of because it's not where I just wouldn't have expected anything like that. But it's always wonderful to be part of something that people really love. There's the egocentric thing that goes with it, but there is just also the part of having contributed in some way to something that people get involved in and get a laugh out of and come out feeling good. That's really nice. Yeah.
I'm so glad that, you know, you got to be part of Scooby Doo, because it is something that so many people grew up with. I mean, like, it's crazy to think that it came out like the year that I was born. So growing up, when I like started watching Scooby, and then I was old enough to not get absolutely terrified by the movie, I watched it, and I will happily talk about like moments in the movie, and all the time it always goes back to the Lunar Ghost and your character. And you know, we would love to see you in more projects and stuff. So do you have any projects or ventures that are currently going on that you can talk about?
I don't. I'm really sorry.
Hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, hopefully in the near future. The latest one that's showing in Australia is a film called The Drover's Wife, but it's a relatively small but important role in that. And that was released this year. And hopefully there will be more. I love acting. So
that's amazing. And do you have any social media or a website that you would like to share that people can follow to keep up to date with any of your new works or projects that you may have?
Again, it's the age, and I don't. I had a website for a little while, but you know, I'd had it, and 3 years on, I thought I haven't even looked at it and I haven't updated it, and I thought, well, that's a bit pointless, really. And I can thoroughly understand how the usefulness of them, so on. And I have a Facebook page, but I hardly ever go to it, and I don't really put much about myself on there. So no. This would have been a perfect time to, you know, do the advertising.
As no, but I think from, you know, things like IMDb, things like that, people can take a look at your previous work, you know, work that comes up in the future. And I know that certainly after this, I know you're saying that the movie you did was on Netflix, and that's something that I'm going to go and look for like today. So unfortunately, the UK don't always have the best variety on Netflix, but we're going to take a look and see what we can find. So thank you so much for all your time today. It's been so amazing to be able to speak to you about your character, the evolution of the Lunar Ghost within the movie. It's honestly been incredible, and we're so happy to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of this movie with you, and all the other incredible people that have worked on the movie as well. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for everyone listening. The links for Rhianna and Devin will be in the description below, and as well a link to the IMDb so people can take a look at some of the other work you've been doing as well. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for being interested.
Thank you.
It's perfect. Thank you. Like, this has just been incredible. And I guess to everyone listening, you know, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and stick around for some future interviews, because there's some cool stuff going on, and we'll see you next time.